it's basically a job where you enjoy telling other people's stories, and it's not about the thrill of being on TV, or if you think that makes you somehow, oh, cool, I mean, yeah, do people say they recognize you and all that, but that's not why you get into the business. So what I look for, and what you did when you were in the TV side of it, and most people I know that have made a career out of this, that have done well at it, they enjoy telling people stories.
Welcome to the Next Level Journalist, where you will hear from some of the best journalists in the business, or who have been there, done that, and willing to share with you what they've learned so you can get better, faster.
My guest today is the sports director at WSAZ-TV in Huntington, West Virginia, Keith Morehouse. Thank you so much for making time for this today.
Hey, Kyle, thanks for having me. I'm glad you're doing well.
I appreciate that, Keith. And look, I want to make this publicly known, but Keith was a huge reason, really vital in getting me back into the door when I was out of TV for 6 months. I worked at WOWK-TV in Huntington. Keith was obviously at a competing station. I left that job and was unemployed, for those who don't know, for 6 months. And Keith was one of those guys who said, if you ever need anything, let me know. And again, we were at competing stations, but he really delivered. Now, Keith, do you remember when Alan Cutler contacted you about me?
Yes, I do.
So that Alan told me, he said, your work was good, but all I needed was someone like Keith to validate you, and the rest is history. So had Keith not have went to bat for me, who knows where I'd be right now. So Keith, like I said, I just want to publicly state that you were instrumental in me getting back into TV, although it's not what I'm doing today. That certainly led me to where I am today. So I can't thank you enough for that.
Listen, you did that on your own. I only validated, the work that you did. And in this business, you work closely even against competitors. And I had always been impressed with how you carried yourself and the work that you did. And just because we don't work at the same station, that's one of the things I've tried to do since I've been in this business. If someone needs a hand that has been kind and does things the right way, then I think it behooves us to do that no matter what profession you're in, to help people that are coming along behind you, or maybe, just getting into the business. You were obviously at that point a talented reporter and talent. And I just, when Alan asked the questions, I just answer them truthfully. And, you'd reached out to me before, and we'd seen each other in different places. And like I said, when someone catches your eye and you're impressed with them, it doesn't really matter if you're not on the same team, because, this is a small business and you meet so many good people and you're a good person. And if I could help a little bit, then that was worthwhile for sure.
See, look, I haven't even asked a question yet, and Keith's already given you guys so much value. So, a person of integrity, a man of his word, so much right there just to pick up. And like I said, I haven't even asked a question. So we're not going to make this about me though, Keith. This is about you and your journey. So take us down memory lane, if you will, and what it was like for you when you knew you wanted to pursue this. Because, we all have unique journeys, but anyone that's familiar with Marshall University and, the movie We Are Marshall, all the above, you have ties going back to this as a child. So take us back to, when this was something you knew you wanted to pursue, being journalism, and in a Cliff Notes version, if you can, just bring us up to date.
Yeah. I won't bore you with too many details. Yeah. My dad was in the radio business, Kyle, way back in the day. He was from Newark, New Jersey, and had worked all over the country, in Iowa and New Hampshire and Beckley, West Virginia. And we were in Beckley in the late 60s when Marshall University had called Dad and said, hey, we'd like you to come up and be our radio voice. Well, we had 6 kids in the family. He said, well, I'll do it under one condition, if I can also be the sports information director, because he needed the money from both jobs to help support the family. So in late 1968, he got the job and came up here. And at that point, Marshall was a basketball school. Dan D'Antoni, Marshall's current coach, was a player for the Herd back then. And they went to the Final Four of the NIT, and football was going through some struggles. So in 1970, of course, Dad had only been here a couple of years. We had, and he was on the Marshall plane crash from coming back from that game against East Carolina in 1970, which took 75 lives. And so we lost Dad then. And I didn't consciously go into this because he had been in the business, but right around my middle school years, I thought, I want to try to do something in that vein, and got my degree at Marshall, and did the print side of things and the radio side of things, and then got into the news business at your aforementioned station, WOWK. I started as a weekend part-time producer doing news, as a lot of sports guys and gals know. You got to sometimes go through the news avenue to get to sports, and then got the weekend job at Channel 13 back in the early 90s. And then in 1996, WSAZ called. Actually, Dan Shoemaker called. Dan was a great friend of mine who worked at ESPN, and said, "Hey, how would you like to be the TV voice of Marshall football and basketball?" And of course, since my dad had trod that path before, I was ecstatic and said, "Yeah, well, are you kidding me? Are you joking?" And so I had made the transition from WOWK to WSAZ. And the first year I did football games, Randy Moss and Chad Pennington were on Marshall's football team. So that was Marshall's last year of FCS. They went undefeated, won the championship. Eric Kresser was their quarterback then. And then from 96 to 2004, I did Marshall football and basketball. And so I was so lucky to have been a part of that during what I would consider Marshall's golden years of football, with Chad Pennington and Randy Moss and Byron Leftwich and those guys. And then also to have the added benefit of working at WSAZ, which is in my mind a leader in our market and has a great reputation. And we covered everything, Kyle, from NASCAR to Major League Baseball to golf tournaments. I mean, we really got the green light to do pretty much what we wanted. So it's been a tremendous journey, and one that I've been so thankful to have had the chance to get into. And that's kind of the long and short of how I got into the business and pretty much stayed here in Huntington after we moved.
I did not know you worked for WWK. I'm surprised I did not know that when we crossed paths briefly.
And it was great there too. I didn't want to say it was a great time and great, learning, and they gave me my opportunity then, not to interrupt you, Kyle, but to get into sports, and that's helped me forge the path where I am now. So, kudos to Channel 13 too. They were very good to me.
Yeah, I mean, it just basically what I was getting at is that you got your foot in the door any way you could. So sometimes that, like you said, that's what it takes, especially in order to get into sports. It's such a competitive area. I mean, you've got 2, maybe 3 people in a sports department. So if you could tell us, what's it take to, what do you look for when you are looking for someone to come in as the weekend person or a reporter, or to help out in the sports department? What is it that you look for in qualified candidates?
Well, you know this, Kyle. You have to love telling stories, and it's not really your own story. My old advisor back in college, Boz Johnson, whose son Rob is our noon anchor, has been for years. He tells us the first day in class, the story is not about you, and so it's basically a job where you enjoy telling other people's stories, and it's not about the thrill of being on TV, or if you think that makes you somehow, oh, cool, I mean, yeah, do people say they recognize you and all that, but that's not why you get into business. So what I look for, and what you did when you were in the TV side of it, and most people I know that have made a career out of this, that have done well at it, they enjoy telling people stories, and they, you have to love going on the air every day and kind of touting the virtues of a student athlete, whether it's a high school kid or whether it's a feature story about somebody who overcame incredible odds to do something. And it's just, sports can be inspirational. And so our job, I think, is to put those stories out there, not just the highlights, because, you can do those every night in your sleep pretty much. And those are important. But to me, the important part is telling stories and letting people, if you're going to go cover an event, then you show the people back home who maybe can't go to that event. Maybe it's a Kentucky in the Final Four, and maybe it's a Major League Baseball playoff game, what have you. You have to show them what it's like where you are, that they can't be. So you have to bring the event to them, so to speak, at their place. But I look for hardworking people that love the business, love sports, are good to work with, have great attitudes, because you can't teach attitudes. If somebody comes in, I don't want to do that again today, I mean, they're not going to make it in the business. And you have to be willing to work hard. The hours are ridiculous, as you know. You have to have a loving family and wife and kids who understand you're going to be gone a lot. But you have to do that out of love for what you do. And it doesn't matter if you're a sportscaster or a librarian or a rocket scientist. If you don't like what you do, then it's just a job. So you have to like it to make it a career, and you have to put your heart and soul into it a lot of times. And so you can kind of tell that the first few times you meet somebody or see their, resume tape or reel, and you say, okay, this guy, this girl, they get it. So that's what you sort of look for, I think.
When you get those reels, links now, which
Yeah.
I sent out links when I was still in the business. I date myself even when like I still have my original VHS.
You hit the tape. Let me see.
There you go.
There you go.
I've got awesome. A DVD over there somewhere. It actually has my picture on it.
Keep that stuff, man. That hard artifact. That's
I don't have anything to play in it. You know, I don't have nothing to play.
That's true. Yeah.
But I've digitized it. That's not. But we're getting off track here. Keith, when you get those, when you get those links, what is it that you're looking for? Because I hear all the time, most news directors, sports directors, they know in the first 10 to 30 seconds or so if they're going to continue to watch those tapes or links. What is it that you're looking for, or what stands out to you that you have discovered?
This is my personal opinion, Kyle. I enjoy the anchoring stuff, and people are very creative, and you can kind of tell whether someone has a camera presence right off the bat. But what I tell guys and girls who send stuff, I want to see you tell a story. I want to see your ability to tell a story. I mean, you can use some cool words and turn a phrase in a highlight package when you're on the air live, and that's neat. I mean, that's important, honestly. And what how they present themselves on the air is very important. But for me, and maybe it's just because it's my preference, but I like to see someone show me a story that you put a lot of work into, that you really like, a story that you told someone else's story that people are going to remember. I mean, honestly, they're not going to remember maybe the Fairland Chesapeake highlights last night, or the Huntington Midland highlights, or the Lexington Dunbar highlights that they saw. But they're going to remember if they told a story about Kyle Scott and what he did to pull himself up from some kind of impossible situation and succeed. Because those are the stories that make you have feelings about, not just you're watching them. And so I always tell them, I want to see some stories that you did. I want to see you put some work into an effort of telling a tale that makes me think, wow, that is a really cool story, no matter, and you don't even have to know the person or the athlete, right? It's just it's just a good story, because everybody has a story if you dig far enough and you ask enough questions.
Well, I love to hear you keep on saying storytelling, and then I hear a lot of intangible stuff. So with storytelling said, what do you think it is that, what are things people can work on in order to become a good storyteller? What are some of those, traits that it takes to be a good storyteller, you think?
Well, I think you have to know the topic, the story that you're going to tell, and you have to, dig into all that background information. Don't necessarily make that part of what you put into if it's arduous or a little bit, mundane. But what I want to see are the feelings. I want to see you tell a story with emotion that comes out. And so it's not so much just that he averaged 25 points and 15 rebounds a game, but hey, did you realize he lived with his great aunt because his mom and dad had passed away years and years ago? And this is how he did. This is the work he put into, to tell a story. I remember when Byron left, which was going to be a Heisman candidate. And I called him and I said, Byron, we're going to come up this summer before your senior season into New York, into Washington, D.C. he lived. And I want to do a story on you and your family. He had come up in a tough environment. And he said, I remember it like it was yesterday, Kyle. He said, man, Keith, you don't want to come up here. Ain't nothing but liquor stores and clubs up here. I said, that's okay. I'll come in the daytime. And he lived within the shadow of the Washington Monument. But, his story was phenomenal. And I remember, Kyle, I used one football play in the story. I like, if you're going to go out, find some other video, show. I met him at the Washington Monument. We're walking around there and you see the White House in the background. And we just got fortunate. And you can't do that with all the stories that you tell. But in my mind, that's what I want to see. I want to see your creativity in telling a story that doesn't always have to center around the feats and the numbers and the statistics that we see and cite every day. If you can do it that way, I think that's really important. I have last November, it was the 50th anniversary, in fact, of the Marshall plane tragedy. And I went into my boss and said, hey, this is coming up this year. And we talked to her months ago. I said, I'd like to, if you'd let us do it, put together a little documentary. So they gave me full blessing. And so in the 50 years since, we went to Annapolis to talk to the coach who took over after Marshall's plane crash, Jack Lingle, in 1971, portrayed by Matthew McConaughey in that movie. We went to Greenville, North Carolina. One of the stories that I had never told was I wanted to talk to some of the players who played for East Carolina that day against Marshall, and Marshall's players never made it home. And they got those 50 years later, they're now in their 70s. These guys are still emotional about it. And then I wanted to tell some of the positive stuff. We went down to Lexington to do a piece on Chad Pennington, of course, who's head coach at Lexington, Sayre, undefeated this year. He's only had football back at that school for 3 years, but here's a great success story who understands Marshall's story. But that's part of what I wanted to do. And they gave full blessing on it. And to work on a project like that, Kyle, where you can stretch out a little bit, you know as well as I do, when you get the 3 minutes at 6 o'clock and they're making you rush, you're trying to cover 3 sports, you don't get a lot of time to go in depth. And so to have that opportunity to go in depth, to me, is the most fulfilling part of the business, I think.
Yeah, that's I got goosebumps when you said that East Carolina, that angle.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully people are picking up, think differently than others and think of unique and creative ways of telling a story. Yeah, I did. I got goosebumps thinking about that because obviously I was there. I happened to be there during the 40th anniversue, so it's hardly 10 years since I've been there. But yeah, that's all such great stuff, Keith. When you look back over your career, or even lessons learned through the years of doing this, if you can think back, even if it was last week, what are some lessons that you've learned over the years that you can pass along to aspiring journalists who can maybe avoid those, maybe not necessarily mistakes, but lessons. They're not learning the hard way.
Right. They're all going to be kind of what's the word I'm looking for? It's not going to be definitive little items that you can check off. To me, it's really, and this because I think of you as an outstanding human being. If you're in this business, just be a good human being. I mean, treat people nicely. Understand that everyone has a story, and that maybe some people have had it much rougher than you have. And just revel in the story part of telling, the stories of these kids, these athletes, these human beings, and treat people nicely. And that's how you get feedback. No matter, everybody has bad days, right? It's a tough business. It's frenetic at times. I mean, it can make you lose your temper at times just because of the way it's structured, that, you go bam, bam, bam up against a deadline, bam, bam, bam up against another deadline. Maybe you haven't slept well, or maybe, all those things that go into the business. But I mean, honestly, we're lucky to have the opportunity to tell sports stories, right? I mean, you live your life, and my wife's a teacher. I tell her all the time, I said, what you do is 100,000 times more important than what I do. So you have to understand where you sit and where you are on the whole scheme of things, but then use it for good, right? I mean, use it to, like I said, tell a story that someone says, oh, that was really neat. I'm glad I didn't know that about so-and-so. And so, yeah, we're not curing cancer out there on the sports desk, and we should know that, right? But just enjoy what you do and make people. One consultant told me this one time. He says most people never see anybody that they never meet anybody in person that they see on TV. Most people don't. So understand, when you go see somebody or you meet somebody out in public, be nice to them, right? Make it where they say, that guy's a nice guy. That girl's a nice girl. That woman's a nice woman. That anchorman's a nice anchorman. It's just, I just think it's how you conduct yourself through the course of your life, no matter what you do. And it just so happens that we see people through this little prism of a TV screen, and they see us back, and they think they know you, and they like you for some reason. They give us a lot of trust to do what we do. And they, to say, okay, I'm going to watch you. I'm going to spend a little bit of time watching what you talk about for 3 minutes. That's a great responsibility. And it's kind of a great tribute. So if you can enhance that by doing the stories that people like to see, and then when you're out and about in public to engage with people and shake a hand, ask somebody about how their life's going. That's just pretty simple stuff. I don't think it's something you need to write down in a book. It's just how you live your life and treat others, I guess.
Yeah, common sense, unfortunately, not common practice, but clearly anyone watching this is picking up why Keith is so beloved in Huntington. And when I said the face of, that area, that's not understating it one bit. Like I said, I got to walk alongside of Keith and just see how he handled himself. So humility, definitely one of your attributes, Keith. So I appreciate that and everything you've shared so far. A lot of intangible stuff. So
yeah.
Hopefully people pick that up.
Well, it is, and just what you're doing now. You've gone on to something different, and we've stayed in touch. And we met in this business, and still to this day, years later, stay in touch. And those are the little things that make it important. When I can look back on something you did, and I say, "Hey, that was really well done, Kyle." And it's just a way to kind of stay in touch. And everybody that's come through this TV market that and like and have made friends with, they're kind of friends for life. So that's a little bit of a life lesson about staying in touch with people, helping when you can. And good on you for doing great things with your projects and all the dreams and the goals that you have. And you've picked it up a notch. So that's good to see too. I'm great to see that success has been good to you.
Well, I appreciate it. I mean, it's been a lot of fun, but stop making this about me, Keith. This is about you.
Well, you gave me enough time to ramble. You gave me enough time to ramble on, right?
Good reporter, right? He can easily smooth it back around.
Yeah, I got to move it back to you. Yeah.
Keith, let's end with something a little fun here. Anything come to mind when you think of most embarrassing TV moment? And I know you've been there long enough where you probably don't get embarrassed.
Yeah.
But is there anything that comes to mind? Even if it was early on.
Well, it's always usually live TV, Kyle. I was covering a West Virginia Louisville game at Cardinal Stadium. This is several years ago, 10 years ago. It's a big game. And we were doing a live shot in the parking lot. And it was after Louisville had beaten West Virginia. And so I'm on the air, and we go into the little boxes at the end, and I say, "Hey guys, back to you." As soon as I said back to you, this woman came up and kissed me on the cheek. And obviously she had enjoyed the pregame tailgating to some extent. And all I'm thinking in my head was, was I off camera at that point? So as soon as we wrap up, I call back. I said, "You didn't see that, right?" They go, "No, we clicked out of those boxes." I said, "Oh, thank goodness." But it's just all kinds of live stuff. One time I was tucking my shirt in, and they pulled me up live. And it was like, just, you just never know what's going to happen. I was trying to say sectional tournament once on TV live. I said sexual, and I quickly changed. Had to whoop, go back. But when it's live, you just deal with it and go on. And then doing games on TV, there's always. I mean, I work with Sonny Randall in the booth, right? And Sonny, if people don't remember, Sonny was an NFL player. He was a former head coach at Marshall, but Sonny had. How should I put this? He had a way with words unlike anyone I've ever seen. He had phrases, Kyle, that we still talk about to this day. Like, he was making fun of a quarterback who was not the fleetest of foot. He said, "Oh yeah," and he had this Southern accent. He goes, "He drowned running through a car wash." Yeah, that's how slow he is. And he just had these little phrases he'd turn, but he'd say them in a way that I had to cringe sometimes. And at one point, I'm on the air. And they take a shot at Coach Bob Pruitt. Of course, Coach Pruitt, Coach Marshall's national championship teams and undefeated seasons. And Coach Pruitt, the best I can put this, was adjusting the front of his pants, but they had him on camera, right? And the camera guy just stayed on it. I'm going, and I hear Sonny laughing. And just out of the blue, he goes, "Look like Coach Pruitt's got something in his eye." And I went, "Oh my gosh." And you hear the whole truck just start roaring. And it was just like he would come up with these phrases, and you just never knew what he was going to say. But I'd literally take the headset off and put it over here while I'm laughing, because he'd say at one point, Kyle, there was a big hole for the running back to go through. And he said, I promise you, Keith, Ray Charles could have seen that hole. And I'm going, "Oh my." So I get to work on Monday, and on my desk is a little Post-it note from the Cabell Wayne Association of the Blind. They had written me a note. And I'm thinking, I didn't say that, he did, but he just would unload that stuff. And I loved him to death, but he was like, he couldn't do that. He wouldn't be in a booth today, because, how things are today. That would not pass a muster, but he was a treasure of a guy. But it's just stuff like that happened back in the day that you couldn't really get by with today. But just some of those things come to mind in all those years.
No doubt about it. Keith, thank you so much for making time for this. And as always, good to see you, even in this virtual space we're in, man. Thank you so much for making time for this today.
Hey, thanks for even thinking about me. And I appreciate all your work. And it's good to touch base with you again. I hope everything's going well in your life.
And thank you for checking out this channel. If you found this content beneficial, I'd appreciate it if you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and share it with someone you think might find it beneficial as well, because this channel was simply started and created to serve you, to help others grow, to learn how other successful TV journalists do or did it. So take what serves you so you can get better faster and reach your next level.